Hi guys. So we'll just wait for a while and see when people join in. So until then, I just want to tell you guys that Unlock India has been extensively covering the UGC case to bring you all the facts regarding the case in the Supreme Court currently. And today's interview is going to be a double dhamaka because we shall be covering the UGC case and the Sushant Singh Rajput death case. So stay tuned, and if there's any technical issues or if we cross the IGTV 1 hour limit, we will be back with the second interview, the second session. So stay tuned and don't go anywhere. Yeah. So just a few moments, and if you guys have seen previously also we've covered. Okay, let's just. Okay, yes. We have with us Advocate Sania Talwar joining in. Yes. Hi, ma'am.
Hello, hi Palak, how are you doing?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
So, okay, briefly, I'll just explain Unlock India and then we can begin with the interview. And so, in just a few words, I want to say that Unlock India is a digital platform and our aim is to provide factual based information to the public pertaining to the legal current affairs, the law, the judgments, whatever's happening in the country. And we don't aim to just give it to, for law students or law professionals. We want to give it to everybody in the country. So, because well, you're a citizen of the country and you should know the law, right? So that's our
Precisely.
aim. And so, guys, today we have with us Advocate Sania Talwar, who is enrolled in the Delhi Bar Council for more than 6 years and has an extensive experience as a legal counsel in a large number of cases, commercial, constitutional, matrimonial, and consumer issues in the Supreme Court, the Delhi High Court, and various other tribunals. So presently, she covers the Supreme Court as a journalist for Live Law India and is also additionally a POSH expert, that is the prevention of sexual harassment expert, and a litigating attorney. So thank you for joining us today, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on board, Palak. Very happy to be here. I'd like to say that today I am here in my personal capacity. I work for an organization called Live Law, but of course we're going to be engaging, so I'd rather keep the opinions personal and present you with whatever facts I know. So it has no bearing on whatever I speak on the organizational aspect of it. Yeah? Okay.
Correct. So I'm Pala Franca, and let's begin this interview on Unlock India. And firstly, we'll be covering the UGC matter and then the Sushant Singh Rajput death case. And if we cross the IGTV limit of 1 hour, please stay tuned. We will be back. So, coming to the UGC matter, ma'am, you know that education is a subject in the concurrent list in the Constitution. So, which
Right.
basically means that the center and the state have equal right over deciding matters to it, pertaining to it. So, what is your opinion, considering what the current situation is in the court?
See, as far as the fact that yes, there is a concurrent list in education comes under that, I'll give you a little bit of a brief idea of what the UGC is saying, has said in the court. What the UGC said was that what the powers that the UGC gets from, whatever powers the UGC has in the current scenario, emanates from the union list, right? That is what the UGC is saying. And when it emanates from the union list, even though there is a concurrence of both the subjects from in both the state and the center, Article 246 prevails of the Constitution. That is what the UGC is saying. And they say that when that happens, the center takes precedence over the state. That is their argument. Okay. So if you read out 246, it says that the center will overtake the state in such situations in terms of what matters of framing policies for education, etc. The states which oppose having UGC exams currently, they say that the disaster management authorities, the state disaster management authorities, have taken the decision not to conduct these UGC exams, and also that the UGC Act per se designates that under Section 12, you will have to take our opinion about whether we want to go ahead with the exams or not. From my perspective, when I look at both arguments, which is only opinion based and also little bits of the law, I understand that this is a situation which we have not come across, I mean, I think for more than a century. And when that happens, the laws, I understand from what I've seen, the center and state are definitely, grappling with governance issues. They are fighting about everything, which is also brought forth a very, very important aspect in the federal structure of our country. What will supersede what? So to say that, because it's a concurrent subject and both of them have power, the legal aspects of both sides will have to be seen, and also the fact that this is an extraordinary situation that will also be have to be seen. So let's see what happens.
Yes, ma'am. Let's hope for the best. And yeah. So, do you think that there would be an impact on the students internationally or in the future if they don't give exams now? Because, internationally, a lot of students in the 2020 batch have given their exams. So, what, in your opinion, would be the impact if students in India don't give these exams?
See, I read sometime back that there is this system called the CBCS system,
Credit based,
which is
yes.
credit-based system. I don't know if that applies. I mean, if it should apply or it has any implications in such a scenario. I know there was a certain commission which was formulated to, put this forth. But the fact that this was never implemented, was never put forward, brings us to a situation where we are left in a conundrum of sorts. We don't know whether it can impact students immediately or in the near future, or whether it cannot impact students. But I know that a lot of countries have cancelled exams and they've formulated alternative systems. But we also have to understand that other countries are not as ill-equipped in terms of internet and in terms of connectivity as we are. We are not very well equipped when it comes to connectivity, isn't that so? And if we choose alternative methods, such as taking online exams, that could have repercussions on students in itself.
Correct.
And when we go the other way, when we cancel exams, students might feel that we've worked so hard, we've worked for a degree, and if these keep getting postponed, then it might have a effect on our career itself. The third side is that if they get promoted basis the credit-based system or basis the semester-based system, which a lot of universities, I understand, have done in India. Tier 1 colleges, as they call it, in inverted commas, they have done that. Well, yes, I think that delaying it further could have implications from a personal point of view. I think so. Why delay getting a degree, at all? But that also comes from an Indian intrinsic sense of understanding things that, why waste 6 months? Why waste 1 year? Well, this is a pandemic and we have to have more robust systems in place. So that's my opinion.
Right. So, yes, coming to the judgment, the hearing that happened last time, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta had mentioned that the whole country is now opening up, and that, the students are 21, 22-year-olds, and how can we expect that they're not going out? So his contention was basically to say that, if the students can go out, they can also go and give exams. Right. So what is your say on, his contention of arguments on this?
See, Solicitor General was obviously making statements on behalf of the UGC. He was making arguments on behalf of the UGC. You also have to understand that whatever this particular argument of his does not have any legal bearing as such. Right? This was a courtroom exchange which legal journalists tend to record. It does not have a legal bearing for sure, because it does not have any legal backing per se, right? Speaking from the perspective of whether it was right or wrong, I don't want to comment on that, to be very honest, because it was made in passing, or whatever reason it was made in. I don't see how we should take it personally or say that, how can you make a statement like that? I think that his idea of putting forth something like that was probably to say that life has to move on. Like Justice Mishra also said, life has to move on. So to comment whether it was right or wrong, I don't think it's my place to really put that forth. Also, I'd like to add, it has no legal bearing whatsoever. So it doesn't matter whether, he said this or he said that, which without a legal perspective to it. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So we are already in the last week of August, right? And the UGC deadline to host exams was September end. And considering that, like this might get delayed further because the judgment has not yet come out. So what will be the impact of this delay that, the judgment delay that's going to happen now?
See, I think that it's going to see, because 3 days they were given. I remember when the order was reserved on this. That was on Friday or third. I don't remember
Yes.
the last week. Friday?
Yes.
Yes, on Friday. And when that happened, they said that, you can submit your submissions in 3 days. So I'm thinking that it should come anytime this week. That's what I think. And if that happens, then we'll still be about like a month, 2 days away from the
Yeah.
exams. The implications on the students will obviously, already I'm sure they're going through a lot of stress, because, I can't imagine being in this situation and having to wait for my examination date to come, and, being in a lockdown. It's
Yeah.
unlocking, but still we are scared of going out per se. So yes, there are implications on the front of stress, on the front of preparing for the exams, and then when you come to talking about infrastructure and whether there will be any repercussions on that, how much time do they need to put everything in place? Equip the places where they're going to conduct exams with enough sanitization or not. All of those things will come into play. So it could have a lot of implications if they delay it further than this week, at least, I think.
Right. So yes, so my last question pertaining to UGC comes under this way, that what in your opinion would, which side would the judgment fall on?
Okay, so I'll say very candidly, I would like to say that I usually don't speculate, because before a verdict comes on, especially personally I might, but usually I try not to speculate, because I report on these matters, right? So when I speculate, I tend to have like a pairing in my head that, this is what I think, this is what I think. So I try to avoid that. But looking at the trend of judgments that have come out in terms of the exams, you all know that the NEET JEE was cancelled. The petition was dismissed for cancellation.
Yes.
And then the CLAT was also, I think, not allowed to be postponed. Something like that also happened, where they said that no, it has to be conducted. So there could be, there is a possibility of the UGC meeting the same fate. I keep going back to Justice Mishra saying that, he said life has to move on. That's what he said in the NEET examination.
Yes.
So there is a possibility of the UGC meeting the same fate. But again, UGC gets conducted on a very large scale across the country. And, it has jurisdictions, federal jurisdictions, where states are coming in, and it's not conducted. Every university has to conduct it. So the courts could give that a little bit of more weightage as well, because they haven't given that to other exams. So
Right.
from a legal point of view, yes, that could come in. Of course, there's the pandemic situation, the extraordinariness of it, and everything. So let's see.
Right. So, okay. So now I think we're done with the UGC case, and if anybody has any questions in the audience, we could address them, at last. And let's quickly come to the Sushant Singh Rajput death case. And firstly, I think there's a great need to, get the facts right in this present case, because of, all the speculation that's been happening. So could you guys guide, the audience through the facts?
So when the death happened on 14th, after that, the next step, which is the CRPC activating itself, that happened on 25th June in Bihar. Before that, whatever was happening in Mumbai was under section 174 of the CRPC, okay, wherein no FIR was registered, okay, when he passed away. What was registered was section, whatever was done under section 174 of the CRPC, which is basically inquiry into offences of inquiry into unnatural deaths. So it basically started as an assumption that it was an unnatural death in Maharashtra, and that was how it was proceeded with. 25th June, Bihar, Patna, Rajiv Nagar Police Station, Sushant Singh's father files an FIR. Says that under criminal, he files an FIR for abetment to suicide, criminal breach of trust, all of those sections under IPC. I could read them out if you'd like towards the end, or
Yes, surely.
yeah, and so all of that was done on the 25th of June. Now, when this happened, a lot of this state to state,
Correct.
acrimonious action and all of those things started happening. The news started blaring about. But the whole point here is that when the judgment finally did come out, we have to go back to understand where it came from. When Bihar got the FIR in place, Riya Chakraborty, the FIR was against Riya Chakraborty, and she filed immediately. She went to the Supreme Court saying that since the Mumbai police is already handling the case, it should be transferred to Mumbai. Bihar has no jurisdiction. That is what she claimed. And she also said that I don't have any problems if it is handed over to the CBI. Okay, initially that was her stand. Now later on, what happened was the Bihar government put forth, these executive orders saying that the CBI should take over the entire case, whether it's in Maharashtra, whether it's in Bihar, whatever, you should take it over. They passed these executive orders, and when that happened, an affidavit was filed by Riya Chakraborty in Supreme Court, as far as I can recollect, and she said that, well, I don't have a problem with the CBI taking over, but not at the behest of Bihar government. What is the relation here? How did that happen? That is what she put forth to the court. And well, finally, it so happened that arguments commenced from the Maharashtra side, from the Bihar side, from Solicitor General who represented the CBI, and Sushant Singh's father and Riya Chakraborty. All of them, they made arguments in the Supreme Court, and the court said that whatever Bihar did was legal. They filed an FIR because under Section 154 they were bound to do it. Why? Because it was a cognizable offence that his father was filing for, and they were bound to take it up. Police officers are bound to take it up. That's what they said. And they also said that the CBI will now take over the entire investigation. So a little bit of a crux of that. I could have missed out some points. If anybody wants to ask me some questions, they can totally do that.
Yes, actually, we have a question pertaining to this FIR and how the FIR was filed in Patna, and like instead of an FIR, there could have been a zero FIR as well. So that would transfer the jurisdiction to Mumbai police. So we have a question regarding what is the procedure for zero FIR. So maybe you could elaborate on that.
So what is the procedure? See, I am not a CRPC. I'm not somebody who practices criminal law. I am reporting on this matter. And when it comes down to explaining procedure directly and being very straightforward with it, I don't think that I should be doing that. I don't think I should be telling you that they should have done this or they shouldn't have done this. I'm only telling you what happened and in what sequence. And I'll give you my opinion. So far as the zero FIR procedure is concerned, I'm not very sure. I'm not very outright with the CRPC. I could give out wrong information, so I'll restrain myself.
But that the jurisdiction holds much value, right? So since the FIR was filed in Patna and then there was a clash between both the states, so how did the Supreme Court make the Patna FIR legal? Because the jurisdiction was different. So a lot of people are confused on this matter regarding the jurisdiction.
See, jurisdiction, what the Supreme Court has said is that the CRPC could have been activated in Bihar. And why could they do that? They could do that because when a cognizable, they are bound to do it under Section 154 of the CRPC. They are supposed to do that. A police officer has the duty to go ahead and file an FIR if if an offence is called for, and they are supposed to do that. So that is what the court has said, that this is valid and this is legal and this is the process that they were bound to follow under the criminal code. and jurisdiction was there. They also have said that Maharashtra also had jurisdiction. Okay, they've
Yes.
also said this. Now, why they said this is because a lot of the incidents occurred in Maharashtra, right?
Yeah.
And incidents occurred in Maharashtra, but however, we have to understand the ground reality. Ground reality is Maharashtra never, initiated an FIR. They never filed an FIR in the first place. And this is what the CBI also said in the Supreme Court. They said that when an FIR is not filed, how can an investigation take place which is going to be valid in law in terms of taking statements or just putting forth just going forward with the procedures under 174? What they're supposed to do is they do the post-mortem, and after that they conduct inquiry and they take statements or something, they do something like that. And but all of these things have no bearing on the procedures. That's what the Solicitor General argued. So the jurisdiction, that's how the court has justified the jurisdiction. They've said that both states did have jurisdiction. Just because the incident did not occur in Bihar does not mean that the court cannot, the police cannot go ahead and do something about it.
Right, right. So, coming back to the judgment, the records of the case, like the Supreme Court said that the records produced by, the Mumbai police does not prima facie suggest that, there was any wrongdoings on part of the Mumbai police in conducting their investigation.
Right.
So, so we can only derive the inference that, there was no lapses conducted by the Mumbai police in their investigation. So what is your say on this part?
See, lapses, the court has definitely not pointed out any lapses from from either of the states. The court has, however, said that it has to be, borne in mind that there was no FIR. That is the word they've used. There was no FIR registered in Maharashtra, by the Maharashtra police. And they have also said that, they have also, put down the aspects of how the IPS officer of Bihar, when he came to Mumbai, how he was quarantined, So they have really, they've spoken about that also in the judgment. So I won't outrightly say that they've said that there is no lapse on their part. They have definitely not said that outrightly in the judgment. But when they have said that there is no FIR that has been filed and, under 154, and the quarantine was done of the IPS officer. So it kind of hints at a lapse somewhere or the other, in my view. That is what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But a lot of people, yes, they believe that Maharashtra did a very good job, and problem. They did not do anything illegal. So there is nothing illegal about what they really put forth. And what your question was, whether there are any lapses. Like I said, I think that yes, filing of an FIR from a personal view was a must, because to assume that this was an unnatural death is something that shouldn't have been done in the first place.
Okay. So, could the Supreme Court not have given a complete and full charge to the CBI in this matter? And how they've given Mumbai police a part to conduct a parallel investigation in the matter. So, what I believe is, could the charge not been given to the CBI 100%?
So Maharashtra, so the procedure, all the investigation is going to be conducted by the CBI now.
Yes.
Okay, but what the court has said is that all the proceedings, whatever they have done till now, the inquiry and everything, whatever they have done till now, has to be handed over to the CBI, and they are going to be assisting them. So there is nothing parallel which is going to take place in this situation. What is going to happen is that if at all any case gets registered in any part of the country, particularly in Maharashtra as well, it has to be transferred. It will go directly to the CBI. That is what the court has now said. So in the future also, someone files a case which is related to the Sushant Singh Rajput case, it's all going to be taken care of by the CBI. So there is nothing parallel which will go on currently at this juncture. That's my understanding of it.
Okay, so are your hopes pinned to the CBI investigation currently?
See, I when I was reporting on this case, I tried to keep my mind very sorted and straightforward and reasonable, and that is what I need to do when I'm reporting on a matter. But now that if the verdicts come out, I'd like to say that yes, my hopes are pinned to CBI, because there is so much going on in this case, and the news channels are constantly blaring about all sorts of things, and it's just unfair because I was pretty fond of Sushant Singh Rajput myself, and when I see that happening, I mean, he deserves an impartial inquiry, and if CBI can do that, then it'll be just great. And I hope all the people that have said that, it was in political agenda by the center because elections were going to start in Bihar. I hope that doesn't happen, because I hope this was actually genuine and it was done for the sake of the actor and his fathers and his entire kin and family. So yes, my hopes are definitely pinned onto the CBI.
Okay, so like you said, how news channels are, blaring with, new piece of information every single day. So right now, people are so confused as to, what to believe, what not to. So how can we distinguish between what is factual and what is, coming out of these media sources right now?
Read live law. Just do that. Don't watch TV. No, like on a side note, I think that that's something you should definitely do. Don't get yourself glued to the TV the whole day. And I understand because a lot of my family members are constantly glued to the TV. The SSR case has reached almost every household in India,
Yes.
and I don't know why that has happened, but it's really left a mark on everybody.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah, so prejudices, inbuilt prejudices against a lot of people are bound to come in, because there are these two political parties are against each other here also, if you think about it from that perspective. And when two political parties are involved against each other, then your prejudice for that political party comes in. If you
Right.
follow, say, Congress, or you're a Shiv Sena person, or you vote for the BJP, then you automatically start trusting them only. That happens.
Right. Right.
So that is why when you feel that is happening, when you feel that I'm watching the news and this person is saying that the CBI is right, or this person is saying that the Maharashtra police is right, you have to be mindful of that fact. That's what I usually do. That just because I vote for this party does not mean that they are saying the truth.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
I
Yeah.
think just a very psychological answer to this. I think you have to segregate yourself from your prejudices when you're watching the news, when you're reading articles, when you're reading any kind of a news. You have to really dissociate yourself from all your prejudices and then formulate an opinion and read live law.
Yeah, so I think we have a few questions. Let's take those up right now. Quite a few questions coming up. Just out of curiosity, ma'am, had you been a student right now, what would you have favored for taking the exam or demanding a postponement of the exam, since it's reasonable both the ways?
Okay, so for the UGC, you're saying if I was a final year student, is that the question?
Yes, yes, that's the question.
Obviously, I would have not wanted the exams to be held. I would have not wanted the exams to be held because I'll tell you why. Because very recently we are reporting in the Supreme Court, and very recently journalists only, Supreme Court journalists, have to go to the Supreme Court to
Okay.
hear the VC proceedings. So like journalists from of Supreme Court journalists all over the country, they come into that one room or like a couple of rooms. It's very well made and everything, and there's a lot of sanitization, but we have to go and report it from there. I understand there are security reasons and they can't hand over links to everybody. But there was a COVID scare sometime back because we were doing that, and we were really scared, and that's when it actually dawned on me that it's something serious. Up till then, I was working, I was going every day, but when that happened, I had to stay in home quarantine for like 7-8 days. And when it actually happens to you, then you start realizing that this is serious and this can be dangerous for me. So if I was a student, definitely I would have not wanted to go out and get an exam. I would have preferred it online only because I have access to the internet.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
With due respect to people who do not have access to the internet, then that's another issue altogether, which the government has to figure out. That's not what the students will tell them how to do.
I think we have a question pertaining to the Sushant Singh Rajput case. Why has the Supreme Court restricted to use this case as a precedent on jurisdiction?
Sorry, I can't understand that. Can you repeat that? Where is that
Uh,
question?
why has the Supreme Court restricted to use this case as a precedent on jurisdiction? Because they said that this won't be used
Yeah.
as a precedent in multiple cases. So,
So,
yeah.
so a lot of judgments when they come out, they usually do that. In fact, very recently, there was this festival issue which came up in the Supreme Court. If you've been following updates, the I don't know if you pronounce it like that, Paryushan
Paryushan, yes,
festival.
yes.
Yeah, it's a Jain festival, which is conducted from 15th, which was supposed to be held from 15th to 23rd. And the court said that, CGI said that, yes, we will allow you to have prayers in the temples, select few temples, but you have to make sure this is not treated as a precedent. It's not, because Ganesh Chaturthi is coming and we don't want people to come out. And so the reason why they probably say it is because they don't want floodgates to open based on they get that rider in the judgment, because they don't want floodgates to open for every second issue that comes between
Right.
states. So that is why probably they choose to say that.
Yeah, and I think you already addressed this, but there's like, do you think that there may be political influence in the Sushant Singh Rajput case? If yes, then will it not affect the CBI?
See, I think that there is definitely some political, aspect to this, because, I mean, I'm not saying that it was just a very small thing that happened. It was something very, it was something very sad. But the way it was sensationalized by the news channels, it was picked up by news channels in the way it was put forth, and there was so much of speculation. There definitely could be a political angle to this. Again, I could only speculate. I could only say it
Yeah.
as a personal opinion, candidly. There could definitely be that, and it could affect the CBI also. But again, then, I mean, how can you say that the CBI does come under the pressure of the government? That's another question altogether. How can you say
That's
that the
right.
CBI directly comes under the? I remember, there was this case which was going on in the Supreme Court, and one lawyer had pointed this out. This is not the Sushant Singh case. One lawyer had made that allegation that the CBI comes directly under the center. Millards is, transferring that matter.
Yeah.
And the court took very strong note of that. The center took very strong note of that. That how can you make such allegations? The whole point is that we can only speculate, and we can read about it. We can understand it on the basis of what has happened in the past, and kind of formulate our own opinion. I think that's the best way to go about it. Don't have prejudices in mind that just because CBI के अंदर है तो center का influence होगा ही. Yeah, it's Maharashtra,
Yeah.
so it has to be Shiv Sena and Congress.
Yeah.
Very important to kind of dissociate yourself when you're doing academic or reading, or from for your sense, sanity of mind. To be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
That's right. So we have another question, and so what is the relevancy of the social media conversation like WhatsApp chats? Actually, that's blaring on media channels right now. All the WhatsApp chats in the current case.
Yeah, so WhatsApp chats. So yeah, so I'm a sexual harassment expert. I
Yeah.
handle sexual harassment laws in the workplace. So when I do that, when I conduct inquiries in the workplace, WhatsApp chats have a lot of relevance. Okay. However, when I as a person, I'm not talking about the police and everything here. I'm me acting as an external member in a committee of an organization conducting a sexual harassment inquiry. I'm talking as that person. So I personally we give relevance as external members to WhatsApp chats. However, you can't do that solely on the basis of a screenshot. Number one, why? Because there are enough apps now which can make a WhatsApp message exactly how your phone makes it look like, and you can just feed in whatever you want. So do not trust WhatsApp messages. If someone sends you a screenshot, against you, don't believe it. WhatsApp chats can only be relied upon if you see the same WhatsApp text on both phones. That's my
Right.
understanding of it. So when I'm conducting an inquiry, and if one person shows me their phone, I would like to see the other person's phone also. जिन्होंने message भेजा है, या the exchange. Why? Also because there is a possibility of a person deleting messages, right? You have that option on WhatsApp. So there is relevance. However, there has to be, when you're talking about news channels, I mean, they obviously want to sell what they are, putting out there with due respect. And people are very interested and they get very glued on, oh, the message hua tha. There is, there is always that aspect which they play on. But the relevance only comes in when they can prove it in the court of law, and I think that comes under 65B of the IT Act. They have to file an affidavit along with that and everything to prove it in court. So they are relevant with riders.
Okay, so I think that answers our next question, because somebody has asked how is it admissible in court and like what section and what act. So I think you've answered that now.
Yes.
I want to quickly come to the the media trial that's happening in the Sushant Singh Rajput case, and media is interviewing all these witnesses, and so like what is your say on that? Because like how is it admissible in court? Like whatever the media says, it's actually not admissible. So what is your take on that?
What do you think? You think that from your perspective, when you see someone talking about a case which is currently going on in the court on TV, how do you feel about it? Do you like think they're right or wrong? Do you immediately form an opinion?
But that's an opinion, right? So everybody is really because there are a lot of people who would not know the legal legal principles that go on. So how it functions in courts. So they get
Precisely.
influenced by what is happening in the media, and like as we said, the media trial is going on currently. So yeah,
Yeah, and there are no regulations to control this. That is the
exactly.
biggest
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
And well, as layperson, people who have not studied the law or who have not practiced in courts or who are absolutely they don't know anything about the law, they definitely tend to get influenced. And I think that really kind of influences the court also in many ways, because they are also a part of the citizenry in effect. But I don't think that uh, in the court of law, when there is arguments going on and there is the legal aspects of things are being put forth, a lot of bearing is there on what the media says or not. Another question is another answer to that is that very recently there was this case in the court which was dismissed. This was filed by a lawyer who said that we want some people from the Judicial Commission, which was formulated to investigate the Vikas Dubey encounter case, to be to get scrapped off. Basically, they wanted the Judicial Commission to be scrapped off. This person, Advocate Mr. Ghanshyam Upadhyay. So he filed a plea saying that they have BJP links. These people in the Judicial Commission, so they're not fit to act independently to investigate into the Vikas Dubey encounter case. The court said that okay, on what basis are you bringing forth these aspersions? You casting these aspersions on former former justices of the Supreme Court, and you're saying that against a person who's been an IPS officer. So the advocate said that I have read some articles, and he cited those articles from a particular news portal and from various news channels, from newspapers. He quoted those articles. Just on Friday, the Chief Justice's bench said that we can't cast aspersions on a person only on the basis of news articles, only on the basis of opinion pieces written. So that will never be a basis for the court to, go into a question of whether this is right or this is wrong. That is merely an opinion that is put forth, unless it is backed with facts and it is backed with like verification. The veracity of it has to be tested, and that is why a lot of courts, if you know that they take up suo motu cases also basis newspaper reports. Recently, what was that case? The child in shelter homes. There was this issue of shelter homes in the COVID pandemic. They were getting infected with the virus, and there was a news report which came out, and the courts took suo motu action on that. So there has to be some veracity of what of the entire piece, of the entire news that comes on. So media trials are a problem, but I don't think that. I think if they are, I mean, if people like me can dissociate themselves when they are reporting, I'm sure judges are well trained to dissociate themselves from the TV and when they are putting out judgments. Definitely. So yeah.
We have a
Like
question
someone.
pertaining. Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Like someone just said that, but in some cases, court takes suo moto action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Since the media is the fourth pillar of democracy, it's their right to put their opinion. That is true, but
Yes.
the yes, ma'am, please
Definitely.
elaborate.
So definitely, I mean, I never said that the media is not supposed to put forth their opinion. I think, I mean, I work in the media, and I'm all for having opinions, but media trials, they tend to, they don't know how to, where to draw the line, because when you're putting out a WhatsApp message or a WhatsApp chat of a person on TV, you also have to understand that a lot of privacy aspects are also being curtailed. So if the media is the fourth pillar of democracy and of the constitution, then you have to understand there are some rights also a citizen has. They are they might be an accused, but they are still a citizen, right? So all those things have to be balanced, and of course we are getting there. Civil society requires all of those things to be balanced, and they're very important. So yeah.
We have a question pertaining to the UGC case. Can you throw some light upon administrative law principle of the doctrine of necessity pertaining to the
I'm
UGC?
sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not very familiar with that. Also, the same person has said that I was completely wrong about something. I want to know what I was wrong about. Could you please elaborate on that?
Uh,
Do you have any idea what was that?
if you're listening, then please, you could let us know what are we doing wrong now. So let's go on to the next question. Could you please elaborate on the right to privacy of the accused in high-profile cases?
Now that is something that is going to be very interesting to even read about now, because of the whole situation. Something very interesting to write about also, considering all the WhatsApp and everything going about. Well, coming down again to the KS Puttaswamy case, there's a very landmark judgment in the Supreme Court, which says that the right to privacy, has to be upheld at any given point in time. Uh, but what repercussions it has from in terms of the what is presented in the media and how it's done, I wouldn't be very well acquainted with those legal aspects of it. I will definitely have to read about this, and you never know, even might write an opinion about this. Very interesting context to work on. Yeah, so I got the answer, Palak. This person says media trial pertaining to SSR case. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you think that media trial is something that should happen? Is that what you're saying? Let's make this more interactive. Anyway, yeah, we can move on. Are you saying that the media
Yes.
trial was required? Okay.
Because I think that impacts a lot of testimonies of a lot of people involved in the case. Because when they come on media and then they produce themselves in court, it's a whole different ball game altogether.
It's a whole different ballgame, definitely. And but then again, like this person pointed out, and this is very important, that media is the fourth pillar of democracy, and they have the right to put forth things, but at what cost? The question is that.
That.
Very recently, the Bombay High Court, they've said something about Tablighi Jamaat. If you've the media trial of Tablighi Jamaat, and how that was wrong and that shouldn't have been done, and they were made scapegoats. So, at what cost was this done? We were reporting about something as Indians, as the media, but what did we put forth? We made scapegoats out of people who did get infected, who did, get involved in something which was a virus, which was a disease, but we blamed it on an entire community, and we said that they are like that, they're foreigners, they came and they destroyed the entire country. So you have to understand, you have to draw corollaries between the two. You must read this judgment of the Bombay High Court. It's come in on Saturday, Friday or Saturday, yesterday or on Friday. Very important.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think this person has said that I believe in the SBA case, the kind of media attention this case has received has put a lot of burden on the accused.
Oh, definitely. Oh, like that. Okay. Yes, that's what I'm saying, right? When you, at what cost are you putting forth information? The media is there, opinion is there, but you realize what scapegoats you're making out of people. To say whether they are getting, they are becoming scapegoats or not, you have to figure it out from your own readings and from your own research. But I'd like to point out, good you brought this up, because in the judgment also, the Justice Rishikesh Roy has specifically said that handing over this case to the CBI will, put to rest a lot of speculation, number one. And number two, he also said that it could take out people who are targets of vilification. Innocents, he said, who have been targets of vilification. He's not said that the accused is innocent, but he said if there are innocents who have become targets of vilification, that will also be clarified. So, that tends to, that answers the whole idea of an accused being made a scapegoat, and how the Supreme Court has tried to tackle that in its own way.
Right.
With the law, of course.
Yeah. So again, I think we have this is giving speech against the state without having armed rebellion make it seditious. I think now it's just coming down to speech and freedom of speech and
Okay.
expression in the sedition grounds. And your opinions regarding, yeah.
My opinion regarding the Prashant Bhushan's case, I would refrain from that. I don't want to give an opinion right now because it's currently sub judice. So because I'm reporting on it, I usually try not to make public opinions, speculate, basically.
Right. Okay, so any more questions in this matter? Take those up.
Yeah, so someone just said that, there is a very thin line of difference between putting opinion and media trial. And the mainstream media is walking on that line. Precisely. So true.
Yeah. It's just a lot of, like, every day you open the news channels and there's somebody other comment about, the Sushant Singh Rajput case, new developments that the media has found out, and people have a very hard time believing, what's true, what's not true, and yeah.
Some question has come in.
Yeah, in the Supreme Court order, it was stated that Mumbai police is investigating and even the CBI is investigating.
No. So what they said is that the CBI will take over the case and the Mumbai police does have jurisdiction. Whatever they did was within their jurisdiction. And now they will assist and comply with whatever the CBI, however the CBI manages the investigation. So go over that judgment once. You could, read that at length. And
so would you say that there's a parallel investigation going on in the current case?
Not really. I don't think there's the court has definitely put a close to that. From my understanding of it, they have said that whatever case comes in, and the current situation, the case, whatever is going on, will be taken over by the CBI. Also remember that Maharashtra police never filed never lodged an FIR. Okay, so to transfer a case also, you need some sort of a case. You need some sort of a case to have, to have been transferred under 406 of the CRPC.
Yeah.
So 174 mein jo bhi, whatever was happening in the Maharashtra by the Maharashtra police was going on, and all those documents, all those files are going to be now transferred over to the CBI.
Right.
So I won't say that there is going to be a parallel investigation which is going to go on.
So I think we're done with the questions, and it's just like, can we expect the judgment on the UGC case by the week? Yeah, I think we could expect the judgment to come out by the next week or so.
I think so too. I think, in fact, I hope it comes down tomorrow only because it's Monday. And let's see. I think it should come out this week. But you never know about the Supreme Court. This is why whenever I say something about the Supreme Court or about any judgment or about any law, especially because I'm a journalist, a reporter in the Supreme Court, I have to give a rider that, this is my opinion and this is bound to change because you never know with the Supreme Court.
I think let's just take a last question and then we can wind up. Can the single judge bench use the inherent powers under 142? Please focus on some previous cases, if any.
Okay, can single judge bench use the inherent powers under 142? So I didn't refer to any previous cases. I think he did make history with this case, with the Article 142 exercising in his inherent jurisdiction. But from where it emanates, there were two judgments he relied on. Now, if I have to give you a citation of it, I'll do that. But it's right there, and if you visit the reports that he made, you will see that he's relied on two judgments for that purpose, and he said that this is how the entire power emanates from.
Okay, I think this is the last question that we'll take is, did the media receive a link to attend the virtual court hearings?
As in, are you saying yes, so journalists go and report so what happens is, okay, Supreme Court there's a particular premise of the Supreme Court, and right next to that, there is an annexure building currently where reporters are going and where media goes and reports from. So whatever proceedings are going on, we get access to all those proceedings in that particular building,
right,
of different courtrooms, right? So we can directly go there and we can report looking at the screens. So initially it was very weird for us because, from a courtroom to going to a screen, but now we've gotten used to it.
Okay. So I think we're done with the questions as of now. So I just want to say thank you, ma'am, for doing this with us and being so candid on this discussion regarding both the UGC and the Sushant Singh Rajput case. And I think it was very informative, and people have gained quite a few insights into this matter now. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us this evening.
Thank you, Palak. Thank you so much. I really love doing this. And of course, whatever I said is my personal opinion. And I could be wrong, I could be right. So I'm open to criticism at any given point in time. Yeah?
Right.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And those who have missed the session, they can, view it on our Instagram feed, Unlock India. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.